Well, I live in the village and they call me Joan Tunnicliffe. And I live, do you know where the church is?
Yeah.
Well, I live just opposite the church.
I'm Dorothy Thornton and I live in Shepley. And I've lived in Shepley a long, long time. And I used to work at Cliffe House a long time ago when the children used to come from Dewsbury. Not the local children, because it belonged to Dewsbury Council at that time. It didn't belong to Kirklees.
So I'm Angela, and I've lived in the village a long, long time. And I remember Cliffe House from when I first came here, because before I came I lived in Dewsbury, and anyone in Dewsbury knew what Cliffe House was because the school children used to come.
Hello, my name's Joy and my maiden name was Keane, and I used to live here at Cliffe House. And Cliffe House is a place where lots of children have come over 70 years to do some outdoor education. As you can see from when you arrived today, it's a very lovely place, lots of lovely fields and places to play. But Cliffe House was first brought about because for children because it was owned by Dewsbury Authority. And many, many years ago, 70 years ago, it was just children from Dewsbury that came to Cliffe House because they didn't have an experience of the countryside like we have living here.
Hi, my name's Sally Nutton. I'm the catering manager here at Cliffe House. I started in January last year, so I'm still relatively new to the team, but I think we're doing all right.
My dad was the headmaster, Mr. Keane, and my mum, Mrs. Keane, she was the domestic bursar, and she looked after all the ladies who worked behind the scenes, who cooked the dinners and cleaned the house and made the beds and everything. And then we had two gardeners that used to have, they used to grow all the vegetables in the kitchen garden behind the house. And we used to pick the vegetables, pop them in the pan, and they were straight onto the table for the children to eat, fresh vegetables every day.
How are you involved with Cliffe House?
Well, mostly it was fundraising events and village events that we had here, and because it was such a beautiful house and garden, it was lovely for raising funds. And you'll know Kirkwood Hospice. Well, before that was built, they had to raise a lot of money for that, and so the village here. We're very busy doing fundraising events, and lots of things happened here. And we had garden parties out here in the garden, and we used these rooms inside here for lunches, dinners, auctions. We had auctions. People used to give gifts, and then they would auction them to try and make as much money as possible, and even dances in the evening. And I've known a jazz band in here in this room, and downstairs, the ballroom, we had a disco down there. So lots of things.
Why did you want to come and work at Cliffe House, and how long have you worked here?
Good question. I came here to Cliffe House when I was 9 years old on a school trip, and I stayed for 4 nights. And I was at home one day and saw the job advertised and applied for it.
Alright, so I'm Mikey, part of the outdoor learning team, so I take the young people doing canoeing, climbing, pond dipping, river walks, all the adventurous activities that we do on site here. I've been on site now for 2 years delivering all the adventurous activities.
Did you visit Cliffe House as a child?
I did. I was 9. And the coach trips, it felt like we was going for hours and we was only on it for about 20 minutes.
And I really feel as well, one of the biggest things is when my dad was here, he was the head teacher, he really was the innovator in taking the classroom outside so that children had an experience of the beautiful nature that's around. That's wonderful.
Why did you want to come work at Cliffe House?
Because I wanted a job that got me outside and working in the outdoors, so I love being outdoors. My whole life I've spent outdoors, and I wanted to pass on my knowledge to the young people as well.
Has anything changed since you were a child in Cliffe House?
Probably just the staff. I think everything else is just as I remember it. There weren't the adventure playground outside when I came though, so that's really good for you guys now.
Yeah. Can you describe how Cliffe House was used for Sundays?
The Civic Sundays, do you mean that? Yes. Well, the Parish Council, Kirkburn Parish Council, is in this area, of course. And every year there is a Civic Sunday for the chairman, who's the chairman for that year. And they have a service in the church. And if it's a councillor from the village here, they have it in the Shepley Church. And afterwards they have a lunch. And there's a procession that marches from the church to here, and there was Shepley band playing, and the scouts and the cubs and the brownies and the guides and various people from businesses in the village were all invited. And we used to hope for a nice day, and then we could sit outside, and we had tables and chairs and umbrellas. Everybody used to bring the garden chairs with umbrellas, so there were a few more places to sit. And we've got many happy memories of those days.
Do you have any nice memories of Cliffe House when you were here?
I have some lovely memories.
Wow.
And the people who had it before were a Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, and they had a little dog called Tiny.
Aww.
And we used to be invited to the parties, and they used to have Halloween parties. And have you been downstairs in the ballroom? No. Well, in the ballroom, it used to be a lovely polished floor, and they used to have parties there. And when it was Halloween, they used to dress it up with spiders and cobwebs and all sorts. And the children dressed up. And the teacher, he was like I don't know, he had all his teeth blacked out. Don't know what it was. It was lovely.
What do you remember about living at Cliffe House?
Well, Beth, I've got lots of happy memories about Cliffe House because I was born here. I was born in a little local hospital in Holmfirth, but I've lived here from 1960 to about 1978. And I just remember having lots and lots of friends because lots of visiting children used to come from all those schools in Dewsbury. And I used to be able to play with them all and just have a great time.
Did anything funny happen while you were at Cliffe House?
Anything what?
Funny.
Well, the children used to have barbecues, and they used to get chops from the quop, and you'll never believe how much they were, 1 pence. And they used to pay for it out of their own money. Cliffe House didn't used to provide them, the children used to buy them, and they were tiny, tiny little chops for 1 penny.
Do you have any memories of Cliffe House?
Well, I think the happiest memories are really having parties here when there were bands and discos, and eating outside on the lawn there when we had garden parties. Yeah.
And we used to have a handyman, and they called him Mr. Tan, and he had a little dog called Tiny. And this dog, he used to say to the children, if you put a threepenny bit, now you won't know what a threepenny bit is, will you? It was a very small coin. And he used to say, if you put it on a ledge up here, Tiny will get it. Well, the children didn't believe him, did they? Because it was so high up. But he used to stand and bend down, and the little dog used to run up his back and get the threepenny bit. And I don't think he gave it back to the children, but he might have done.
There was lots of things that happened here because it was, as you imagine, quite a wonderful place to live. But I remember the winter, very early on, a very bad winter that we had, and me and my 2 sisters actually built an igloo on the front lawn. There was so much snow, we actually were able to make bricks of icy snow, and we made an igloo and sat in it. But actually thinking about it, it's just reminded me of a funny thing. My family, my cousins used to come, and we used to sleep in the attic, and that's where the family lived. And we used to have big midnight feasts up in the attic, and that was brilliant.
And when you worked in this room and looked out on the lovely gardens, that was nice.
How many things did you sew a day?
How many?
Things did you sew?
How many things did I sew?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't tell you. They used to, I used to mend the sheets to start with, because Mrs. Keane said, could I sew? And I said, well, yes, I can. And so she gave me the job of sewing because I came here as a cleaner because I wasn't very well and I needed to get out of the house. So Mrs. Keane gave me a job here, just doing anything. So I did anything. And then she said to me one day, can you sew? Now, the children that used to come to Cliffe House, they really didn't have any waterproofs at all. Well, it does rain a lot here, as you know.
Yeah.
And so Mrs. Keane said, could I sew? And I said, yes, I've got this lovely, very all singing, all dancing sewing machine. And I made all these trousers, and I said, I will make the trousers, but not the jackets, because they are too complete, they're too hard.
Yeah.
What do you like about having so many children over and like getting to meet them?
I think what I liked about it is just the different people that used to come and just the constant change of children. But I think it's probably maybe very chatty because I'm used to people, and it probably ended up that I talk too much now. I always had a lot of people to talk to, and I think the best thing for me was just having all those people come. But don't forget, I lived in, you know, my village was Shepley, and I made friends with the village people as well, of course, because I went to the local brownies and the local guides and the local church, and I had lots of friends from school. And I actually went to your school, Bird's Edge.
Oh.
That was my school, yes. And I went there from 5 right through to 11, and then I went on to Penistone Grammar School. So I had friends out of Cliffe House as well.
Do you still come to Cliffe House to do any of the activities?
Yes, I came this weekend when it was the art house weekend, and it was really enjoyable. I come once a month to the community lunch, and I bring some of the older people in the village who can't walk here very well, so I pick them up and bring them here in my car. So I come fairly regularly, yes.
What's your favourite activity at Cliffe House?
Ooh, I would probably say canoeing and river walking. So canoeing would be my like off-site activity, and then river walking would be my on-site activity.
How many activities did you join in?
Gosh, well, as you can imagine, there's 32 children that came, and usually that was 16 boys, 16 girls, and they each had they shared the 4 dormitories which are on the first floor. And I mostly joined in with things like the canoeing, the climbing. Once every visit we would go to the cinema, which was in Home Firth, and I would join in with that. And I would also join in with the swimming that we did in Huddersfield at Cambridge Road, Bath. But one of my best activities was having sleepovers with them. And I used to sleep over with them in the dormitories from time to time, because some of these children came year in year. They came for more than 1 year. And so I made friends, you know, for a couple of years with them. And so I loved having sleepovers, which was the best sleepover ever.
I like the adventure playground, and I like the zip wire. Even though I might be too big to get on it, but it don't matter, still do.
What is the children's favourite activity?
That varies. It depends on the programmes that we're doing. So some of them will come and they will really enjoy the archery. Some will come and say they've really enjoyed crate stacking. So yeah, we get a mixture. Generally, the playground. So a funny story from our time here. When we were doing a pond dipping session, we had a young boy who wouldn't follow any of the instructions that we were giving him, continued to mess around through the whole session, so he actually went for the dip himself in the pond.
They get lots of good comments and feedback on the forms that we give out at breakfast for canoeing and river walking. And they also like the team building activities up in the woods.
So every day is different, so I'm not doing the same activity all the time. I get to do different activities with different people all the time.
How do you think that children benefit from their stay at Cliffe House?
Well, they get to learn about being outside and working as a team and identifying little creatures in the pond and not to be scared of them, and all sorts of environment, river walking and river systems. And
they gain a lot of confidence in themselves, and I think they leave here being a much better team player. So we do a lot of team building activities on site, and I think they benefit massively from the team elements.
Well, when I came to work at Cliffe House, I did it because my daughter had just started school at Shepley, and I had no relatives in Shepley, and so I just thought it was a good thing. So I came here to work as a domestic, you know, doing the vegetables, polishing the floors, making the beds. But we didn't have a right lot of contact with the children because the children went out to the quarries and the farms and things. They all came from towns, you see, not like you living in the country. And so it was an experience coming where there were fields and gardens and everything.
What do you most like about working at Cliffe House?
All the smiley children that I see every day, all the smiles on the faces after I've fed them such nice food, and all the compliments, and that we get to grow our own vegetables and we have our own greenhouse and we're aiming to grow a Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
I used to come in the morning and first of all I used to get the vegetables ready for the lunch, and then you used to do all the washing up from the breakfast. And then after that, when the children had gone out, either gone to the schoolroom or been taken out to the farms or the quarries, we used to do the cleaning. And we used to polish floors like this on your hands and knees with a polisher that went round and round and round. It was hard work, but it was good. We were well looked after. We got a break halfway through, and Mrs. Atkinson always had cakes in tins, and you can help yourself to a cup of tea and a cake. So we were well looked after.
How many school dinners do you cook each day?
It can vary in between 30 and 120. Depends what size school arrives.
What's your favourite room in this house?
I love this part where we're sitting now, because when I was a little girl, this was the dining room and the children used to sit in various tables there, and along here was where the teacher's table was, and I was allowed to sit on the teacher's table.
What was the food like?
Beautiful. Always fresh from the garden if it's vegetables, local meat from the local butchers in the village, and the milk used to come in big churns, about that big, from the local farmer, and the meals were always hot and delicious, and always a pudding.
You had nice food.
With lovely meals.
Yeah.
We had a cook, Mrs. Atkinson, and she was very plump lady, but a very good cook. And the children had lovely meals. But we all used to have to, the people who were domestics, we all used to have a day when we cooked for all the meals, the breakfast, the lunch and the tea. And that was quite an experience.
Do you have any funny stories or memories about Cliffe House?
I remember when I stayed here as a child, that inside one of the wardrobe doors upstairs said Red Rum, and that's murder spelled backwards.
What?
Have you ever had any really scary moments?
Are you talking about the ghost? Yes. Yes, I have. I remember when I was probably about 8, and I was looking for my sister. There was only the family in the house at the time, and I was looking for my sister, and I was calling her all over, Eleanor, where are you? And I thought I saw her running up the main staircase. So I followed her onto the landing, but I couldn't see her anywhere. And we have there's a back staircase, which obviously was the servants' staircase in the time. And I came back down there and she was nowhere to be seen. Now, at the age of 8, I didn't really know what ghosts were. But when I then found out, I still had this memory of what I saw. What I saw was a Victorian lady dressed in a long black coat with a bun in her hair, swept back, and some keys at her waist. And she was holding a candle. The candle wasn't lit. And she was just walking round the curve of the staircase. And I think that was the ghost. I think she might have been the housekeeper. And then my parents did have some experiences as well up in what was the butler's room. That was their bedroom up in the attics. And they think they had a few experiences of ghosts there too. So I think it's haunted.
Do you have any scary stories about Cliffe House?
Well, the kitchen is definitely haunted. I have seen a lady in there. And I was very, very scared. I was in the building all by myself one Sunday, and there was somebody in there with me. And it was a lady, and she had a blue and white pinafore on, and she was stood just next to the door, and I could see her. And I was scared. They're all friendly ghosts here though, there's no bad spirits in this house.